The other day, we talked about how eating disorders can actually impact the brain. Now, I definitely recommend going to watch that video because it'll be really helpful for understanding a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. The link for that video will be in the description. But what we're going to talk about today is actually how to help someone in your life that you may think is experiencing an eating disorder. And this is a question that I get very often. And frankly, it's a tricky one to answer because especially if someone is an adult, you can't force them to seek help or get treatment. And so that can be a really tough position for you to be in. But I'll give you just some pointers. Now, first and foremost, you do want to approach them and address them about it. You want to talk to them about their eating disorder, but you don't want to make it accusatory. You want to use I statements, things like, I'm concerned that you are not eating lunch, or I'm worried that you're spending a lot of time at the gym, or things like that, right? You don't want to say things like, you're not eating enough or you're doing this wrong, because that's going to bring up their defenses and then they're going to just shut down and not listen to you, right? So first and foremost is actually addressing it. Number two is going to be actually working with them to get help. Now, you may not get to that point right away. You may have to go through step one multiple times, because what might happen is they try to tell you that they're fine and then it kind of ends the conversation and you feel like, well, I don't know what to do now. So you may have to go through number one a lot. But let's say number one, it does work well and the person is like, you know what, you're right, I have been experiencing this, and this. Number two is going to be helping them seek treatment. So don't just say like, oh yeah, you should go see a therapist or you should go see a dietitian or whatever. Really help them find someone. And what's important about that is it then makes them feel like they have someone to hold them accountable. So that's really important. The other thing is encourage them, like let's say they do find someone, maybe it wasn't a great fit or it wasn't like the experience they were hoping. Tell them not to give up. There's plenty of different providers out there, lots of different ways to seek treatment, but the eating disorder can kind of take over and say like, oh, well, it wasn't a good fit. That person said this, and this, and whatever. See, I did it, I'm done. But don't let that be a barrier. Encourage them to really go back and look for another person, because the reason why there's lots of different people out there and different personalities is because you're going to mesh well with someone, or maybe you're not going to mesh well with someone, and that's okay, but you've got to find that good fit. Now, number three is, let's say you've maybe gone through those first two steps, or maybe you haven't. These don't necessarily have to be in order. But number three that I'll point out is you really want to talk to them about how their eating disorder is going to impact their life, maybe now or maybe in the future. So they may not be experiencing any physical symptoms. We've talked about that in a lot of videos, how, some people don't feel like they're sick enough because their lab values are fine, or they haven't actually lost a lot of weight, or who knows, right? There's physical symptoms might not be there, but like I mentioned in that other video, how the gray matter in your brain actually decreases from not eating enough, that's going to impact mood. It's going to impact your ability to focus and just cognition. It's going to impact your thoughts. So if this person is maybe in school or has a job that of course requires them to think, which would be most jobs, it's going to impact that. And so again, they may not be noticing that because they've kind of probably gotten used to that new normal of maybe not being able to focus as well, but you can remind them of some of those things about how that's going to impact them from under eating. And then what we always do, and we do this in treatment, but you can do this as well, is really help them to understand like, okay, if you want to do this in 5 years, you not eating enough is going to impact this because of X, Y, and Z, right? So really show them how the restriction is going to take them away from some of their goals. That can help them really bring awareness to how severe the eating disorder is. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you isn't necessarily a step, but it's just one thing that I want to point out, okay? And what I want to point out is that eating disorder brain can be very sneaky. And what I mean by that is it will come up with every excuse in the book. Seriously, it will tell you that, it's really not that bad. I only exercise this much because I'm just trying to build muscle, or, oh, it's perfectly fine for me to not eat fat. Fat is unhealthy, or I don't know, stuff like that, right? And it's going to rationalize everything. It's going to tell you, oh, well, I don't have time to see a therapist. Well, my work schedule. I just don't have time. I don't have time, or I don't have money, or there's going to be a billion excuses. And frankly, a lot of them may be legit. I'm not saying that this person is making them up. That's the sneaky thing about the eating disorder side. But you have to ignore those excuses. That's actually on the National Eating Disorder Association website, is ignore the eating disorders excuses, because that's a very common thing. And actually, actually a very frankly convincing reason why a lot of people don't seek help when they actually need it, because they've essentially convinced the people in their life that they're fine and what they're doing is normal. But that was that eating disorder brain taking over and trying to not get the help that we know it needs, but your eating disorder, of course, wants to stay there. So if you're struggling with finding help for someone or helping someone in your life that you think has an eating disorder, these are some great tips. Some other things to go look at are on the National Eating Disorder Association website. It's NEDA, N-E-D-A. You can go check that out, and there's a lot more on there that I won't get into today. But those are some things to really pay attention to and some main points that I think are really important for you being able to help someone in your life. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. We're so glad that you're here and on our channel.